Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a while, has it not? I'm going to stop addressing the fact that I haven't recorded podcasts in a while and just keep going. So, this week is going to be a quickie, but it's something on my mind. So, as I've alluded to a million times, and I'll continue to do so until we're on the end of the year, extremely busy, continue to be extremely busy. I'm actually choosing to take some time off. So, take a couple days off just to kind of relax, catch up on things I need to do around the house, and also just not work insanely. Also, I felt I earned it a little bit because my last class legitimately kicked my ass. But we won't get into that because I don't ever want to talk about that class ever again. I will tell you about something kind of interesting, and this will further prove that I tend to take motivation from really weird places. And inspiration, motivation, whatever you want to call it. I tend to pull that from a lot of different places. And that's one of the things I've tried to teach you, or I've tried to elaborate on, or I've tried to make you realize is that a lot of times in life, things are given to you all the time, but it's up to you to put the pieces together, right? It's the teach someone a fish situation. You can give somebody a fish, but it's not until you teach them to fish that they really kind of are able to be self-sufficient. And one of the things I've sprinkled on throughout these podcasts is the idea that give yourself the time and availability to more so find patterns in what you're doing and the cards that the universe gives you. And what do I mean by that? Because I don't want to get too hippy-dippy because I lose people. Ultimately, if you're a person that ends up really being annoyed by the annoying coworker that talks a lot of negativity, and then you find yourself to also talk a lot of negativity to your friends, there's likely a pattern there that you're not connecting to, that you're not learning from and adapting to. But that's one of the things I've wanted to kind of allude to a little bit on this podcast is finding your own patterns, for improvement's sakes, and for looking for a thing that you're not seeing because you're not allowing yourself to see it, and not allowing yourself to give yourself enough time and developing your analytical mind a little bit so that you can see patterns and break negative patterns in your life. That's one of the things. So I'm going to tell you how my brain makes weird connections, and it alludes a little bit to this, right? And it turns it into motivation. So I don't have a lot of time as of late, and you guys know this. But every once in a while, I do like to enjoy random things that do bring me happiness. And one of those things is anime and manga. You guys may know that about me. I love anime and manga. I've grown up with it since I was a tiny, tiny, tiny child. Since I was probably 5, 6, maybe younger, I came across Dragon Ball. I've been an anime fan my whole life. And I will to this day argue that anime is arguably the best animations available. And more so because it can appeal to everybody. It can appeal to young kids. It can appeal to adults. The themes within anime are very adult. Kind of like Shrek movies, where you'll watch a Shrek movie as a child and you'll laugh and you'll see the goofiness in it and you'll enjoy it. But then when you rewatch it as an adult, you're picking up a lot of things that you didn't pick up as a child, because now those more adult themes are far more tangible for you. They're far more in your face than they ever were as a kid. And anime does that exceptionally well. It does that exceptionally well with emotions. It does it exceptionally well with themes and philosophical ideas. I mean, I don't want to get into this because I could talk about this for a very long time. But as an adult, I watched Naruto. And Naruto, I've talked about this, I think, on the podcast before. Naruto has 200 episodes in the original series, and then the continuing series is 500. And that includes filler, which you can totally bypass, and it saves you hundreds of episodes worth of time. But I watched the whole freaking thing. And that, to me, is my number one right now, just because it's been the most topical as far as what I've come across. But I've been watching Dragon Ball, as I said, since I was 6. Thematically, is that the best show? No, it's a shonen, it's an action show, but Naruto has some deep-rooted, intense themes that I've often gone back to rethink and done deeper dives when it comes to the philosophical ideas behind the show, behind the characters. Each one kind of is doing a little different thing that applies differently in how they approach life. But I'm not here to talk about Naruto, even though I could for a whole hour. The thing I've been doing to kind of just have a little fun, every once in a while I came across a new manga. But I came across a manga called Solo Leveling, and that's my shit right now. I've been reading the manga. Those are coming out every few months. I mean, at this point, the next one isn't out till another 5-6 months, which your boy can't wait. So they often have things called light novels. And in light novels are basically like the books that the material usually stems from, unless you get one of these guys like Toriyama, who wrote and drew Dragon Ball for a good portion of his time. And those guys are under insane deadlines. I mean, some of those back in the day, maybe even now, they still put out like weekly releases. That means they're working all the time to release a handful of pages every week. But that's besides the point. That just makes me think about how sometimes we complain about how hard our jobs are, but those dudes and women are drawing and writing and conceptualizing ideas to make a cohesive story, all within 1 week, doing it all. Those people are so overworked; they break down all the time, but physically and probably mentally. So I digress. So I've been watching Solo Leveling, or reading Solo Leveling, and then I caught up, and I've been like, I want to see the rest of this. How does this go down? I'm very invested here. So then I found the audiobooks online, because for me to sit down and read is a huge commitment, which I can't do right now. There's just not enough time in the day. But audiobooks I can do, because if I'm cleaning the house or organizing things or working on a project or, at work or something, I can have it in the background and I can get through an audiobook. So I was listening to the audiobooks, which is great because on the weekends I could drop two audiobooks probably. And it kind of catches me up. So Solo Leveling isn't that much. From what I gather, there's only 8 light novels, which means it's about 8 audiobooks, 7 hours a pop, give or take. And I'm almost done with it. Super, super enjoyed it so far. But why am I bringing up a manga? Because a lot of you are probably like, who cares? So I'm going to tell you why. And I'm going to tell you why I'm talking about this week's episode. Apart from the initial topic I mentioned earlier, finding these connections in your life, finding these patterns, improving from those patterns or connections. The one thing I picked it from Solo Leveling that was very interesting was, I'm not going to give you the whole premise of the show or the whole premise of the book, but ultimately, and I guess there is an anime adaptation coming on, the whole idea of the book is that there's this guy who eventually kind of is able to get stronger. And in part of that, he's always been very weak. And so in part of that, he's has this, almost like a computer system that he can only see, he can only interact with. And every day he has a requirement to do like X amount of push-ups, run X amount of miles, and something else. Like he's got like 3 things he has to do every single day. And the first day that he comes across his computer system, he doesn't do it. He's like, I'm too tired, I can't do it, whatever, right? And then the computer system realizes he doesn't do what he's supposed to do. And so for punishment, it teleports him somewhere else where he basically has to survive these giant centipede monsters, for X amount of time by himself. And that's his punishment for not doing the thing. So up until then, he just continues to just work his ass off because surviving those monsters was far harder than him just doing his push-ups and crunches or whatever and his running. And that's all I'll say about Solo Leveling. But I thought that was very interesting because throughout the story, he does get stronger, right? And at some point, these things become like non-existent for him. Not a big deal to do these daily tasks. And I was kind of laughing because when I was reading this book, or listening to the audiobook or reading the books, I found myself like in situations often where, because of when I'm working, my commute, my schooling, there is times where I don't get to things. I'll sometimes not work out a day to try to get a little caught up with school or get a little bit caught up with work. And that's just the nature of the beast as of late, which I hope to change soon. But I was thinking to myself, I'm like, you know what? It is a bit ridiculous that I can institute something like this. And this right here goes back to the whole thing about where motivation comes from, right? Making the connections. Anyways, it's a little ridiculous that I can't do something like this. So because I'm pig-headed and as stubborn as I am, I instituted something somewhat similarly. I basically said, the days I can't work out, like the days I can't find myself to go to the gym or work out at home, like a legit workout with weights and whatever else I choose to do, right? I can spend a couple of minutes to try to just do a little basic body weight workout. So I've been doing it. And so the days that I cannot work out, have a legitimate weight workout, maybe do a little, whatever else I do. If the days I can't do those things, I basically do 100 push-ups, 100 body weight squats, and 100 crunches. And I do those in 20 intervals, one after the other, right? And I'll take breaks in between for sure. I mean, the first day, I'll be honest, the first day, like the knee's a little creaky because you're doing that much more volume. I mean, I could do squats. I do squats all the time, front and back squats, the whole shebang. But the first day when you're doing that many reps, it's like, oof, all right, the knee's a little poppy. You know what I'm saying? Your boy's not getting any younger. I'm not going back in time. I wish I could Benjamin Button it. But the first day, a little creaky. The first day, the push-ups are like, oof. All right, a little lactic acid buildup here, right? Like towards the end, you're like, all right, a little bit more. I thought it'd be a little easier to do, right? The crunches, not too hard. I could do the crunches. So now I've been trying to institute a new exercise instead of that crunch, but that's not a big deal. That's not the point of the podcast. So we'll move on. And it's kind of funny because if I'm pushing myself, and I mean pushing myself, like I'm going body weight squat, push up, crunch. And then back up, I go back to the same thing. Body weight squat, push-up, crunch. And then I do my 5 sets to total 20. Yeah, I mean, it's a little huffing and puffing towards the end. A little lactic acid buildup for sure. But I can knock that workout out under 10 minutes if I'm really, really pushing myself. If I'm for sure under 10 minutes, I haven't really done it, but I can do it. If I'm like just kind of lackadaisically doing it, not really trying to break a sweat, I'm not really trying to, if you're trying to do things in between, let's say you want to do this at work, right? You're maximizing your time. You want to do 1 set of the 3, and then you go and do something else, and then you do another set in the day. It all adds up in the end of the day, right? So if you do it that way, you don't want to break a sweat, you get a nice suit on or something, cool, whatever, do it that way. But my point is, when you do it like that, when you split up the workload and you maximize it in a way that works for you, it's going to be far more beneficial than you not doing anything at all. And I've noticed it, right? Because now the 20 weight body squats are fairly easy. And now I focus more so on the mechanics. I focus on the proper movement, trying to optimize the movement for the muscles I'm trying to hit. I'm constantly thinking about, like, am I feeling the hamstrings? Am I feeling the glute activation? If I'm feeling the quads when I'm doing this, where's my upper torso positioning? Am I too leaning over? Am I not leaning enough? Am my arms forward? Are my arms on my head? Am I cranking my head? I mean, these are the things I'm thinking of as I'm doing just the body weight squats. And now I'm focused more on the technique. And I'll be honest with you guys, the body weight squats are getting easy for sure. And I haven't been doing this for long. Keep in mind, your results won't be mine because, it's not like I'm not working out. It depends on where you're starting from. But the body weight squats are getting easier. The technique is getting better. There's really no pains. I mean, everything's working out pretty well. There's still some creakiness, your boy's not getting any younger, but there's still some creakiness. But even with the push-ups, I mean, the 20 push-ups move quickly now. They move quickly. There's not a lot of issues. I just kind of one from the other. I've been doing a new ab thing that I'm still kind of learning, so that's a little quirky. But my point to this is saying you can easily find efficiencies, and I've made a mention of this a million times before. You can always find ways to optimize things. That's always been my philosophy in everything, and I've benefited from that tremendously because there's no way I can do what I'm doing and I've been doing for over a year without optimizing some of the things I'm doing, whether that's optimizing my work schedule, optimizing my workouts, optimizing my lifestyle, optimizing what I spend time or don't spend time on. If I wasn't doing that, there's no way I can get done what I usually get done in a week or a day or whatever. That's what this is about. And this is also about one of the other gems I've given you guys over the last, year or two of this podcast is the idea that don't give yourself a choice. Set it in your mind to say, this is what I'm going to do, and do it. The moment you allow yourself the weakness to trickle in, like, oh, I'm just tired. Oh, I'm not doing that great today. Oh, I'm just sad. Whenever you let those little weaknesses trickle into your back of your mind, you lose because you won't do what you do. And then the next day when you don't do it, your mind goes into, well, we didn't do it yesterday and it wasn't that big of a deal. Oh, just skip another day. And then 1 day turns into two turns into a week. All of a sudden your results are gone. The only reason why these things are getting easier for me because I'm doing them every single day if I'm not working out. And in some respects, those examples I've just given you apply to a lot more than just working out. This podcast isn't about working out. If that's what you think this is about, you've lost the point again. I started this podcast by telling you about finding out little things to make connections in your life. Well, this is one of those little things. Definitely take this for face value. Definitely take this as a, hey, I can implement this little workout thing and this would be great for me. Definitely do that if you can. But there's more to this podcast than just telling you to do these little exercises every single day and not giving yourself a choice. There's more to it. And this is your exercise. In addition to your physical exercise, which I do think you should do, your physical exercise is finding out how this also adapts to you in your life. Because it's there. And that's it, ladies and gents. That's this week's podcast. I'm going to go to try and enjoy a little bit of time off. I'm going to actually try to do a little woodworking today. Wish me luck. And we'll talk next time. I am LifeGeneralist, and this has been Curious John.